Okay.
Okay.
Okay, hello and welcome to the Partnership Projects podcast. My name is Rachel Elmer and I'm returning this year to host the Partnership Projects first ever podcast for parents. Partnership Projects is inviting parents, their practitioners to share their stories and experiences of embedding NVR within their family settings. They may want to talk about the highs and the lows, the struggles and the small wins, how they want to continue to maintain the approach even when the work comes to an end. So I'm delighted that this week we are speaking to Tony Meehan, my colleague, and one of the families he's been working with is Sarah. So over to you, Tony.
Thank you. My name is Tony, and I am an NVR practitioner with Partnership Projects. And I am really pleased to be talking with someone I've known now for over a year and who has been represented one of the most complex cases I've had. And I just want you, Sarah, could you just introduce and tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name's Sarah, and I'm bringing up my grandson Harley. I have a SGO, which is a special guardianship order. So Harley has been in my custody since he was 3 months old. We first noticed that Harley had some issues or problems from around the age of 6 months, and things have sort of led up way and beyond my means. And it's been a joy really to be able to work with someone from the NVR to be able to put more things in context for me.
And it's been a real pleasure working with you, Sarah. And I know we've been on a sort of a journey together. And I just want you to tell us a little bit about, what is a special guardianship order, for instance, and tell us a little bit about what that actually means.
A special guardianship order is it was mainly because my daughter was seemed unfit to bring up Harley.
Right.
So it was sort of social services gave us the choice that we could either put into place the special guardianship order or Harley would be put into adoption. We didn't want Harley not to know any of his family, so we agreed to go down the court route of having the special guardianship order so that we've got parental responsibility over Harley. So we see to all his medical needs, his sort of schooling, education. We take him for trips abroad and things. And it's sort of been a bit of a highlight because I've got two 20-year-olds in the house as well. So it's I'm a bit outnumbered because I'm the only female.
And you talk like about the challenges that Harley presented. Can you talk a little bit? First of all, how old is Harley now, and what are the challenges that we were talking about that brought you to Partnership Projects and NVR?
Harley was 6 in September, and I said, we've had him since he was 3 months old. We went down through the road of getting Harley diagnosed with autism because he was sort of rocking backwards and forwards a lot. He was sort of causing a lot of damage to himself because he liked to headbutt things all the time.
Yeah.
We've now then he was diagnosed with having global development delay, which is now because of his age, it's now a learning disabilities. He's got sensory processing disorder, so he is very complex in what he likes and what he doesn't like.
Yeah.
If you want to play rough and ready with him, he likes the rough and tumble. He'll like going out in a car until you stop, and then because the motion stopped, a sensory issue will kick in. He's also got dyspraxia, pica, ARFID. The list is going on.
Yeah.
He is also, they think he's also got ADHD, but I'm waiting for another referral to go through for that.
Yeah.
But because of, I class Harley as a chocolate orange. You have to unwrap it and you get all the different segments inside. Not only do you just look at the one item, but as you go deeper in, you can see more complex needs to Harley, and you have to try to balance them all out and get it right, which is very, very hard because you can be fighting against the sensory with the autism, or it's the learning disabilities that are actually stopping you from trying to progress down another route of his learning. So it's one battle against another, but when you try to branch them out, you can try to sort of form some sort of regulatory thing for Harley so that he can understand, he can communicate with you in his own way because he is nonverbal. He's still in nappies. He still drinks from a baby's bottle. But to me, those aren't the big issues. The big issues is for Harley to be able to interact properly with people without his behavior becoming an issue. I used to be afraid of Harley. I could see that Harley was changing and I would run. I would put myself in another room. But through doing the NVR, my confidence has grown. And now I am not afraid of Harley. I try to interact with him to be able to manage the behavior without inflicting any sort of punishment or restriction or restraint onto Harley to be able to get him to calm that down.
Brilliant. Sarah, can I just come in there because there's so much there to unpick. I remember when we started NVR and with you, and I remember thinking the first thing is, how do I apply NVR in this case? Because NVR is about working with the adults, but there is interaction with the child. And one of the things in NVR we talk about is the announcement, where the child is spoken to, or an announcement is made about what you will not no longer put up with. And yet with Harley, that's never going to be the case. And I think it's been one of the pleasures working with you has been this being able to use NVR in a very, very creative manner. And the first thing we started off with is, how do we raise your presence? And I remember when we started, Harley would not let you out of his sight. And what we worked on was, how do we, change that controlling behavior? And I remember what we had to do was, we had to get you to leave the house for seconds to begin with, and then come back to demonstrate, I go, I come back. I go, I come back. Do you remember that? Can you talk me through what that was like at the beginning?
At the beginning, I couldn't leave the house. If I went to put my boots on or my coat on and Harley had the instinct that I was going, his anxiety would really heighten and he'd be sick. And then it was trying to sort of, I felt guilty leaving him with someone because then I knew that I had to clean him up and the mess that he'd made. But I think taking it in, as we were taught at the beginning, in micromanaging and micro steps, it was done so that I eventually started to go outside and use the outside toilet. And it was just that sort of a minute away from him. And then that minute would sort of build up a little bit more so that I would go out into the garden and I'd stand, even though I could still sort of hear Harley inside. Or it would sort of be going to the garden gate. And even though that I could hear him, he'd be pulling the curtains down and trying everything he could just to be there with me, to get my attention, to be back with him. But I've got to a point now where I can say to Harley, I'm going to put the bins out.
Yeah.
And I can go and put all the recycling out, all the bins out, and I've got no problem. When sort of people have picked him up before and they've taken him out the house, I've been able to hear Harley screaming all the way up the road. And I know it's been a challenge for me to be able to hold my emotions in, to think, they're putting my grandson through that. Why are they sort of doing it? But it has to be for the better good for Harley, to make him realise you can trust other people. they're not going to hurt you. They are going to keep you safe. And it was trying to break that safe haven for Harley. To me, I'm his safe space.
Yeah.
His indoors is his safe area. If he didn't want to have anything to do with anyone, he used to throw all his toys at the toy box and climb in his toy box and hide because he didn't want people around him. He didn't want them in his space. We introduced into the garden, we would have people around, and it was leave him alone. Don't go anywhere near him. Don't talk to him. When he's ready, he will come to you. And that's the way that we've had to plan it. And it's sort of, Peter taking him out for a walk while I've gone in a different direction, just to sort of break that bit of independence to say, I can go with someone else. They are going to keep me. Yeah, I'm not in any harm. And then he's getting to know now, even when I take him up to a forest school, he knows that I'm going to be there. It doesn't matter whether he's having a good time or a bad time down there. He knows if he's having a bad time, he sort of communicates to them to say, I need my nana. Can you take me back?
And you remain absolutely the key person in his life. And yet, if you were to continue as you were going along, it would have been unmanageable. And I'm glad you used that word micro steps, because I think that was what we did. It really had to get people to think differently about Harley's progress would be in micro steps. You listed off a range of needs, which means he has highly complex needs, which are still emerging. And the idea then that, anybody could come up with the view that we know now what the plan is for Harley was just not appropriate. But what really became evident was how your growth in terms of your confidence and understanding of what Harley was about. You were the expert of Harley. You are the expert of Harley. Now, I want you to talk to me a little bit about the All About Me book that you created and sort of kept hidden, but suddenly when people started to read it, made a difference.
I think I always thought that I was battling and getting nowhere. I would take sort of 4 steps forward, but I was taking 10 steps back. I was having multiple meetings with professionals. And it was like they were only treating Harley as having autism. They weren't actually looking at his extra needs and what I was sort of going through, what my family was going through. I wrote them a letter.
Yeah.
And the response after that was everybody listened.
Yeah.
And to me,
Can I just come in on that? Because that was a key point, the letter. And I want to just explain, this became what the announcement. And really what was so powerful about this was I said to Sarah, oh, send me the stuff you've written down and I'll have a look at it and I'll turn it into an announcement for you. And she sent me a page of, I would say, beautifully written a language that really captured what Sarah and her family were experiencing. And with an announcement, there are 3 levels to it. The nice bit at the start with what you like about your child, what you will no longer tolerate in the middle, and a preferred future. And all I did was put a top and bottom to the 3 pages. So this was probably the longest announcement ever. And I just said, this, I can't do anything with this, Sarah. It's brilliant. Send it off. And this wasn't about the service. Sarah has a lot of support, but I think it changed a lot of people's views about who Sarah was, what she was going through, and what is needed. And the response was very, very, very powerful. You take it from there, Sarah.
Yeah, and I think after that, it gave me more confidence. I sort of did an autism awareness level 2 and level 3. I took myself out of the situation. I went into a supermarket. I sat in the middle of the floor. I closed my eyes and I could sense everything that was going on around me. There was the different smells, the different noises. It made me realize more of what Harley was going through. And it made me then realize, well, I can handle this situation. I know how I can do this. I know how I can do that. And then I thought, well, if I write it down, but do it as it's from Harley, so it listed his likes, his dislikes, what would trigger him, how you could calm him. And I sent it to the outdoor provisions. I sent it to all the sort of OTs, social services, and the schools. And it made them more aware of what Harley could actually do, what he was capable of. To say that Harley's 6, but he's got the mental age of a 18-month-old to a 2-year-old, and people were trying to teach him at the level of a 6-year-old. But I think the book highlighted it more to them. Well, no, he can't do this. He can't understand this. So you have to do it around a different way. I bought coloured dartboards, trying to teach him different colours and trying to pick up basic sign. And it was all put into the book so that people were able to communicate with Harley in a basic way. People that have read the book have sort of said, wow, we already know Harley. And they've built up such a good reputation with him now. And I keep adding to it. And if someone said to me, well, do you think we can try this? I said, don't keep Harley within a certain boundary. Harley likes to control things. But if you just give him that little bit of control, but you've got the reins, I said, you can pull him back that little bit. I said, if he shows that he's going to go off the handle, I said, just talk to him, try to calm him. I said, just touch him on the shoulder. I said, it usually sort of brings his brain back a step as to think, well, no, we can do this another way. We can go this other way. When he goes to the outdoor forest, because Harley doesn't like walking through mud. So I bought a trolley that Harley can sit in and they'll pull him around so that he can go past all the muddy spots. But they weren't intimidated that I'd given them the trolley for Harley. And they said, great, it's a brilliant idea. So now, whenever they're going out, where they know it's muddy, they take the trolley with them. And it's, I think, having that connection and that working together that is bringing Harley on more. But it's basically because they read the book. So they had more understanding of how far they can push Harley, what not to do with Harley. Even though he didn't like the mud, they can now take him into a bit of mud and he's quite calm. But he lets them know when he's had enough, and he will now actually point to the trolley to say, no, put me in the trolley, you've got to pull me past it. And I think it's that understanding that people have. And I think that's why I used a lot of metaphors, because the metaphors that are used make people more aware. If I said to someone, no, Harley can't do this, that, and the other, and they said, well, why not? And I said, well, because he's complex. They don't understand it. But if you put it back into layman's terms and use a metaphor, then they think, oh, yeah, I can understand that. And it makes them think differently how they can react around him.
I have to cut in here, Sarah. You're not getting away with this. I'm not going to. Sarah, that every week we would have a different metaphor. And I think Sarah initially lacked confidence about this. And I just found the way she was being able to describe what was going on in terms of metaphors. And I remember the most appropriate one I thought was, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, Sarah, Mother Nature. Now, come on, tell us about what that means and why that's so powerful.
To me, Mother Nature starts with a tree.
Yeah.
That tree is Harley's safety net. But as that tree grows and it keeps branching out, we know that we can teach Harley different aspects of life, different training, and different directions. Harley's used to a routine up to a certain point of what he can understand. We have to try to divert that, change the direction that Harley thinks. But also with Mother Nature, you've got the 4 different seasons and the way that Harley acts through the seasons. So in the spring, you've got the growth so that he's changing all the time. He's learning to do new things. When you get to the summer, you know that everything's in full blossom and Harley's in his element because he can be out running around and he's enjoying it. You get to autumn when things start to sort of die off and you think, what's Harley going to do now? Things are changing around him. It's not just the coldness. It's not just the way he dresses and everything else. And then you come back to winter when, you've got the bare branches. And I think to look at Harley that way, you know that you've got those 4 seasons, but you can combine them and that is your year.
Yeah.
And you have to focus on little bits on each segment of a tree. And then you know that you can carry on growing. But with that, Harley's confidence grows, his interaction will grow, but he still knows that he's grounded to that one spot with me. And it's making him feel more safe, more secure. But he knows that he's got that freedom to try different things. Nothing's holding him back. There's no sort of saying, well, no, you can't do that because you don't like that. You've still got to push them boundaries for Harley to succeed.
And one of the things, like, in your use of language was so powerful and I think I used to enjoy, and I'd write them down every time you'd come up, you'd come up with them. I'd be scribbling them down. I'm not letting you, you won't forget that one. I'll come back to that one. That there was the boat with the rising tide, where you are managing his environment. But one of the things that was most powerful in terms of how you have progressed is this understanding of, I can't control Harley himself. Talk me through the point at which that became apparent.
I think Harley's sort of always been a hard child with his behaviour.
Yeah.
If he wasn't headbutting and biting and kicking and pinching or pulling hair. And it was trying to get to a point where I could try to stop Harley from doing it without damaging anything around him, without hurting himself or hurting other people. But Harley can't understand discipline. So it was trying to manage a different way of being able to control Harley without him thinking that he's being controlled.
Yep.
If he gets the inkling that someone's trying to control him, he will retaliate.
Yep.
And it's trying to get down on that same level with Harley. When Harley's been out in a pushchair before and is sort of trying to kick off, or if someone walks past, he tries to attack them, I've brought myself down to Harley's level so that we've made eye contact just to try to get him to calm. And it's just that visibility to Harley that thinks, they are coming down to my level. She's not putting me in danger. I don't have to be sort of nervous in my environment. I've now been able to take him to a play park, which has got 3 different gates on. And I know that I can stand in the middle of the play park and Harley can run to his heart's content while I'm still watching the 3 gates so he doesn't escape. And I think he knows now that I'm free. I can run, I can jump, I can do what I want, but I know that I'm still kept safe. And I think before, if I tried to sort of put any sort of control or boundaries into that place, then the fight that Harley would get, it would be the fight or flight risk that Harley would have. And it was trying to work out whether is he going to run or is he going to fight me? And I think the way that we've been communicating with one another, he knows he's not in harm. He has the simple word no. There's no raised voice. The body language is kept the same. And I think that has worked better than any reward system that you could have in place. And I think it's just the way that Tony has sort of talked me through sort of being able to control my body language, the tone of my voice, and the way that I react. And Harley now sees that we're on an even kill. Just the simple word no, I look away, and 9 times out of 10, he hopefully stops. Doesn't it doesn't work all the time?
I love what you've said there, Sarah, around, just implementing some of those neuro de-escalation techniques that we invite parents to adopt, and also that vigilant care of just sitting within that park, knowing that your grandchild knows where you are, but you know where you are, and you're there for all of those things. And I think that leads into the secure attachment base that you're providing for him as well. So as Tony described, all these elements of NVR are just being weaved into this work unknowingly almost. It's just a natural thing that Sarah's doing.
Well, I think that's what makes NVR so powerful. It's not. I could not arrive to Sarah from one week to the next. Where okay, well, let's move on to this. Let's move on to that. It was absolutely none of that. And the first few weeks, I was scratching my head, thinking, where are we going to go with this? But Sarah, just watching Sarah change, and I think Sarah talks about the word no. Now, Harley's in the background there. When we started, Harley was constantly at demanding Sarah's attention, and it struck me after a while. Like, hang on a sec, the noise has gone down. What's going on here? Is he there? And yes, sure, he is there. I'm listening to Sarah say no with such authority, with such presence, as she described in that even tone. No, and then back to me, and it just fades away. But there was a really interesting time, I think. I just want to draw reference to when one of our sessions, Pete arrived at the screen and said, Tony, you need to listen to Sarah. And I thought, oh my God, I thought things are going downhill now. And you take it from there, Sarah, what happened?
I'd actually managed to get Harley a school placement. He'd been, well, I'd taken him out of one of his play groups because I didn't think they could meet his needs. Another of his play groups had expelled him because of his behaviour. Harley had been out of school then for 18 months, and I was getting pushed from pillar to post for the EHCP progress, schools saying that they couldn't meet his needs. And then I found a school. I told them that's the school I'm going to go for. I said, if I have to drive him myself and pick him up, I will. And that is how we got him to get into a school placement.
And I think that was a real breakthrough moment, but it hasn't been easy because there's still aspects of Harley's complexity that have still to emerge. So that's something that Sarah and the school are working on. Like, what exactly is the extent of his complex needs? But it also means then that, Sarah, you've taken the view that your raised presence needs to, this influence now that you've created around Harley has then taken on a different path. So there's two major things going on for you now, which I think really signals your next development levels.
I have now become a parent governor. so that I can have more say, hopefully, and more input into how the school is actually treating children with complex needs. And I am signed up for a neurodiversity and psychology course so that I can go into schools and I can train the trainers. It's going to be long and hard, but to me, the more I learn, the more it's going to benefit Harley because I can understand more. But also in schools, even playgroups, and even some of the like social services or the OT professions, I can go in and explain more to them what a neurodiverse child is. It's not just a child that's got autism. It's not just a child that's got ADHD. And I think it's just going to widen the whole spectrum of what people have got misunderstood. I think they need more awareness of what a neurotypical child is, what a neurodiverse child is. You can't treat one child the same as another because they've got completely different needs. But I think a lot of the training that people are given, it only mainly treats autism or ADHD. They leave out the dyspraxia, dyslexia, Tourette's. The list goes on. And I think people should be just made more aware of what actually a child can be suffering from. A lot of teachers, they don't know how to treat a child's anxiety. Do we just take them out of the environment? Did we put them in a quiet place? Did we put them somewhere else? And it's not until they actually understand that child and what that child actually needs, they're not going to learn anything because it's just going to be the same for each child. And I think making the example of a school, I think, they should know, especially schools should know that a child is not just classed as one or the other. In a lot of the SEMH schools, how are they actually teaching a child that has got behavioural issues? Are they treating them the same as the other schools? Or when you've got a school that's speech and language and SEMH, how do they actually treat the child differently? How do they teach them differently? Because they're all in the same classroom. So how can they sort of pick and choose how they're going to teach without actually knowing what other factors can be taken in?
And this is the powerful aspect of this. How does one show progress in a situation like this? And in NVR, we work mainly with the adults. And in this case, it hasn't been straightforward that the announcement is made, the sit-ins are had, the relational gestures, and I'll come back to that in a minute, are done. And then you begin to see your presence rise. Now, Sarah's presence has risen, gone through the roof. That has been evident to me from the start to now, where we are now. And this is a natural progression that she's branching out. But one of the things, Rachel, you and I were talking before this was about relational gestures. What do we mean by relational gestures in a case like this? Now, relational gestures are these things that we do and expect nothing in return to their positive gestures, their acknowledgements. And I had to think about this in Sarah's case. And of course, everything that Sarah does around Harley is a relational gesture, because there is no guarantee of a positive response in a tradition, how we traditionally understand a positive response. But and it's slower, and it's Harley feeling very, very secure. And one thing I will say about what Sarah has done very successfully is, because her presence has grown so much, anybody that Sarah says is safe or sees as safe and secure, Harley now understands. Nan sees this person safe and secure, therefore that person is safe and secure. And suddenly Harley's world has grown from being stuck practically side by side to Sarah in a room to now going to school, going out with other people. And I think this is the critical aspect of it. And I remember halfway through, sorry, I'm bringing Pete in there. I know he's in the background, but that time when Pete told me when they went on holiday to Turkey, and the progress was Pete could take Harley for a walk and let Sarah, what did you do on holiday, Sarah? Oh, I read a book. That's where things were. That's the sort of level of progress now that's being made. And it's brilliant to see that Sarah is now taking this to another level where she is sharing her lived experiences with other people.
I've got a question. I've just thinking, Sarah, about how you've raised your legitimacy as being his grandparent and worked with and resisted professionals who haven't worked with you to support him and meet his needs. And you're the epitome of the 3 Ps, the perseverance, persistence, and presence. And I think, that you embody that completely within the practice. I've got a question, and I guess before we close, I'm sure there's a couple more, Tony, but if I may, just at the start of the journey, Sarah, when we first met in consultation, and I guess, now over a year later, you're in a different place. What's been the most significant thing in NVR that stood out for you that Tony's introduced you to?
Acknowledgement. It's been, I think when I started, I was really down. I couldn't control my emotions. I didn't know which way I was going or where I was turning. I got to the point where I didn't want Harley anymore. Harley had sort of ruined my life. But then sort of working with Tony, it sort of gave me the kick that I needed. It was sort of, well, you've done this. Congratulate yourself. And it was sort of, Tony was a stranger. Why is he saying this to me? When I'd sort of been working around a lot of professionals. But it was like they had to say it, but coming from someone else, I'm thinking, well, yeah, I have done this. And I think it gives your confidence such a boost. And you think, no, he's going to listen to me. He's going to work with me. And I know that he can help me with the challenges. He's made me think outside the box of what I would. I was told at one point I didn't know how to bring a child up. They wanted me to do practical parenting. I said, well, I've got 3 kids. I said, he's completely different. I said, I've worked with children before. I said, but not one like this. And I think being with the NVR, it's made me realize what I can become. I have now become more of an advocate for Harley. I have become Harley's voice because he's nonverbal. And I think that has carried so much emotion through a lot of people. And I think it's sort of, people then turn around and say, oh, you're doing a great job. But it wasn't until sort of working with Tony and sort of going through the nitty gritty bits of, how I could sort of change myself to become a better and bigger person and think, yeah, I can take the world on now. And it gives you that real big boost to think, I can continue, I can grow. And the more I'm growing, the more I know that Harley can grow. And I know that his needs are being met and his education can be met. His socializing is getting better. And it's just such an improvement. And when Harley's in a really cheeky mood, you couldn't have a better kid. And you think, yeah, we've done this, we've managed it, we've conquered. There still is a long way to go. It's still going to be a learning curve. But I think if it hadn't been sort of getting together with Tony, I think I could have come to the breaking point and it would have been, I can't handle this anymore. I'm getting too old for it. I want a life. I lost, all my friends. But, when you look at a little boy that's got a cheeky little grin, you think, nah, he's worth more to me than a friend. And it just makes you think in a completely different way. And I don't think I would have thought that sort of 18 months ago. And I think it just gives you that new prospect of life. It gives you more of an outcome of life. And you know that it's going to be challenging. It's not going to be the same every day. And I know that, there's going to be a lot more ahead of me, but it's made me more prepared for what the future can bring, even if no one else can say to me, well, we're going to do this, that, and the other with Harley. I know that at the end of the day, we'll still be here for him as a family, and we will carry on fighting for him and being his voice.
Oh, Sarah, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Tony, what stood out for you as Sarah being your case? And
I just early on, but this watching Sarah's grow, her presence rise. She was not aware she was having an impact or having the impact. I feel there was times when, I mean, we've had moments when Sarah would let rip,
Me?
and that was fine. But what was brilliant was just how Sarah would pull herself around and decide, okay, I've got that off my chest. Now, how do we move forward? And I think the sense of confidence has been recognized by the support network, all of the professionals working around Harley. Every single time they talk about her confidence, her confidence, her confidence. But it's not just confidence, her expertise, the understanding that I cannot control this child in a way that's going to change his behavior immediately. I can't fix this child, but what I can do is I can fix the environment and manage the environment and support others to see what I see. That's why I brought in the All About Me book, which is really powerful, and it's so on the money. This is how Harley is. So my point about, as I said to you at the very beginning, this was not classic NVR. There were we know NVR is not a linear process, but this was anything but linear. It was back, forward, back, forward. But I always had someone in front of me who was determined and absolutely advocating for Harley each and every time. So I could go on, I could go on, I could go on.
I guess before we close, just one more question that obviously the work may come to an end at some point with Tony, Sarah. How do you hope to maintain your skills that you've learned through working with Tony and using NVR?
I think it's something that has to be passed on to establishments, the schools, preschools, play schools, because there is not enough understanding about how people's body language can affect a child, how their tone of voice can affect a child. And I think something like that needs to be implemented more.
Mm.
And I'm hoping that, when my challenges do finish with Tony, we will stay in touch.
Oh, absolutely.
Because to me, if it hadn't been for being put on the NVR, I suppose Tony's my second backbone. And I know that if I have a struggle, I know that sort of Tony's there, he will listen to me. And it's sort of, then he gives me the sort of right, I can do that. And I think it's because of the way that we've built up the relationship with Tony. And it's more of it's become a friendship, even though it's professional.
Yep.
And it's sort of, to me, if anybody said to me, would you recommend in the NVR? I would be 100% behind it, because I think there's so many challenging children out there and people just don't know how to deal with them. And I think people need to know how they can handle themselves to be around that child in a positive way.
Sarah, you have moved heaven and earth. I'm just so inspired by you and Pete and what you've done for Harley and how Tony's worked with you. Yeah. Any parting ending, Tony? Anything you'd like to say before we end?
See you next week, Sarah.
I love you too, Tony.
Okay.
It's been said, I like, you use the word inspirational. This is a great story, but it's an ongoing story. There is no nice, tidy end to it. But this is about a story that is progressing and developing and blossoming. Just to use one of Sarah's metaphors, the blossom, summer.
Oh, you too. Great. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Sarah. Much
No problem.